everyone. Welcome to the NCNW program. I'm going to turn this program over to our Social Justice Committee Chair, who is going to get us started, or co-chair, which is Miss Janice Welch. Miss Janice.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Janice Welch, the Social Justice Co-Chair for the Queens County section of the National Council of Negro Women. Thank you for joining us this evening. On Wednesday, October 1st, we hosted the Meet the Mayoral Candidates fireside chat at the Black Spectrum Theater, where all 4 candidates in attendance were given the same questions and equal time to respond. Tonight is part 2, created to provide an opportunity for candidates who were unable to attend for the first session. In spirit of fairness and consistency, we will follow the same format this evening. Before we begin, please note, the views and opinions expressed by the candidates are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the National Council of Negro Women or our partners. As a reminder, the purpose of tonight's program is to foster an open, informative, and engaging discussion with the 2025 New York City mayoral candidates, and we value the diverse perspectives each candidate brings to the table. Therefore, we ask that everyone remains respectful throughout the program. Disruptive behavior will not be tolerated and may result in removal from the Zoom room. Thank you all for your cooperation. And at this time, please welcome our Social Justice Chair, Soleil Griffin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining the event. I would like to introduce to you our president, Shakina Black.
Thank you so much, Soleil and Janice. And thank you, everyone. So good evening, family. We are so delighted to have you join us this evening. NCNW, the National Council of Negro Women, will celebrate its 90th year of advocacy for women of African descent, their families, and communities. Queens County section has been doing this work for over 38 years. We know advocacy is best when done in unity. So we have asked our community partners who have similar missions to join us tonight. This way, we present this to you in unity. Although this Zoom meeting has a limited audience, all of our organizations have branches throughout the boroughs and beyond. So our reach is wide, and we know each one has a responsibility to teach one. So please spread any information to everyone that you know. You will hear more about our partners as well later. And at this point, I would like to thank you, and I'll turn it over to our hardworking co-chair, Janice Welch.
Good evening again. Our moderator tonight is Ms. Patricia Robinson, a dynamic media executive, educator, and community leader with over 25 years in radio, business, and public service. She's a former senior executive for iconic stations like Hot 97, WBLS, KISS FM, LIB, CD 101.9, and now serves as the C-suite leader at the Greater Jamaica Development Corporation, where she drives economic growth and community transformation. Patricia hosts Conversations on the Block on 94.7 FM, reaching over 500,000 listeners weekly, and teaches media and communications at St. John's University and Westchester's Community College. She's also a published author of The Awakening, The Limitless Within, and founder of PR Premier, serving major clients like Warner Records, Apple, and AARP. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Patricia Robinson.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to this evening's conversation. I'm super excited to be here. On tonight, we gather not for performance, but for purpose. This is a declaration of accountability that we're asking for in our next mayoral elect. You, the voters, myself, the neighbors, the parents, the workers, the caregivers will bear the consequences of the decisions that we make. And we know that we live in a city where there's stark inequality, where our zip codes dictate access to education, to housing, justice, and care. So as I talk to the candidate this evening, I am not asking for slogans or platitudes. I'm asking for specific plans, measurable commitments, and a moral clarity. So many of our lives hinge on this election, from domestic violence survivors seeking safety, human service organizations that are trying to keep their doors open, families craving stable housing, children yearning for opportunity and the ability to stay safe, elders that need care and safety. So much is important. So I am hopeful by the end of this conversation that you are more informed and well able to make the best decision on who's prepared to lead us as the next mayor of New York City. So with that, I would love to get started. Hello, Mr. Mondani.
Hello, Patricia. How are you?
I am doing well. I am doing well. I understand that we have a limited amount of time, so I'm just going to dive right in. I want to
Yes, ma'am.
start talking about public safety, which we know remains literally as one of the most urgent concerns in our city, not just for victims, but for families, for youth, for neighborhoods. Our entire cities are living in fear and trauma. Just yesterday, about 15 minutes away from where I live, a young adult was killed in his home. We are seeing a rise of this happening continuously all of the time. So if elected as the mayor, I would like you to talk about what you plan to do to prevent and to resolve this problem in our neighborhoods, with the understanding that there is an immediate need for safety and that waiting for reform may take too long as we are seeing people die in our streets.
I really appreciate the question, Patricia, and the chance to jump right in. First, I'll just say before we do so that it's a real pleasure to be here at NCNW, and I thank you not only for the invitation, but frankly, for the work that everyone on this call has been doing for so many years. And it is the very kind of work that I want to be a partner to in City Hall. And to this question about public safety is the cornerstone of any agenda for this city. It's the cornerstone for my agenda of affordability for this city. And what I've heard from many New Yorkers is a concern about the fact that the response times for police are growing, that the jobs we are asking to do for police to do is growing, that we continue to see, every year 911 calls increasing. And the question remains, how will we actually keep New Yorkers safe? And I'm proud of our platform to create a Department of Community Safety. It's been hailed as an innovative approach by experts in the field to deliver this safety that you're speaking about and to deliver it immediately. So I'll go through a few of these things. The first is right now, the NYPD receives about 200,000 calls a year for mental health crises. Having this be one of their responsibilities is part of why the response time in 2020 used to be closer to 11 minutes. Now it's closer to 16 minutes. So our vision is to take mental health and homelessness out of the NYPD set of responsibilities, allowing police officers to focus on shootings, to focus on homicides, to focus on serious crimes, to increase the response rates to those crimes and also the clearance rates. Because what I hear from many New Yorkers is a frustration and a fear that we are still only solving half of the crimes that are being reported. And so this is a key part of our vision of how we're not only going to make it easier to do the job of being a police officer, but also ensure we're only asking police officers to do the job of policing and not the job of a mental health provider or a homelessness service provider, that we can actually separate these things out because it's been successful elsewhere in the country. It's time to bring it here to New York City.
Okay, and I appreciate you answering that. I'm going to dig just a little bit further and then we're going to move to
Please.
the topic. But when we are talking, so we're talking about responding, right? But let's talk about how do we interrupt the cycle of violence before it. What are we looking at in terms of root causes? Is that a lack of resources? What are we doing to look at the root cause to interrupt that violence in our neighborhoods?
Well, I think if we have to both approach the systems and the symptoms at the same time, because as you said, no one can afford to wait. And the systemic approach also has to be an approach to ensure that opportunity is within reach for each and every New Yorker, that we have an economy not just of survival, but also of aspiration, frankly. And I'm inspired by the work of the mayor of Baltimore, who did a full comprehensive study and found that it was just 2% of Baltimore residents that were responsible for more than 75% of shootings and homicides in that city. And he created an integrated system of the police, of a cure violence approach, and of gun violence interruption that was able to combat that, such that they're on track to have one of the lowest number of homicides in their history. So a key part of our plan in creating this Department of Community Safety is to also bring in the crisis management system, bring in gun violence interrupters, and increase funding for them. Because I'll give you an example. The crisis management system, when it's been implemented, has reduced shootings by up to 40%. Why is it that it's only operating in fewer than 30 of the more than 70 precincts in this city? Our commitment is to increase funding for the crisis management system by 275% so that we can actually approach this issue comprehensively, all while focusing on providing the jobs and opportunity through an affordability agenda such that every New Yorker knows there is more than what they're living through right now.
Okay, and thank you for sharing that. And so last night on the debate, I heard you mention briefly about procurement reform. So kind of talking about that crisis management piece, and I promise we're going to move to the next topic, but
I'm happy
procurement
to.
reform, right? You talked about that. So when you mention that, you're stating essentially that you believe the system as it is right now has some transparency issues, may not be effective. So I want you to talk about that because that has impact not only on the current system and those who may think that it's working, but what does this reform look like?
Well, this reform looks like taking on a politics of patronage that has been in our city hall for far longer than just these last few years. It looks like understanding that if we have an MWBE program and we want to fulfill the spirit of that program, we cannot be satisfied with fewer than 2% of all value of contracts only going to Black women in New York City. We have to have a program where the population of the city is reflected in the contracts being awarded by that same city. And so to me, procurement reform looks like both cutting down the costs and the savings that can be done through creating efficiencies in the way the city actually does its contracts, and also looking like awarding contracts to those who are going to do the work as opposed to those who know, and ensuring that that's a reflection of the people who call the city home. Because right now, as we're facing this authoritarian administration in Washington, D.C., that is making it its responsibility to go after Black women across this country, pushing out about 300,000 Black women from the workforce and attacking one of the most prominent Black women in our own state, Attorney General Tish James, whose endorsement I'm proud to have. We need to understand that these attacks on our city are also attacks on these very issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's the stated basis for why Donald Trump is looking to suspend $18 billion in infrastructure grants, is because he wants to go against diversity, equity, and inclusion. So procurement reform has to also look like living up to our actual ideals with those very things.
Got it. Thank you so much. And so I'm going to
You're
move
welcome.
to housing. Housing, as you know, remains one of the most pressing concerns across Queens, but particularly in New York City, period. Residents are struggling on two fronts, right? The lack of truly affordable housing, which we know for working class families, but also people who earn too much don't qualify for these deep subsidies, and they don't make enough to keep up with these rising rents. So there's something that needs to be done here. So talk to us about what your plan is to make sure that you address these challenges. In addition to addressing those challenges, how do we protect our seniors through home security, safety upgrades, transfer and maintenance of ownership and wealth, generational wealth? Now, before you answer that, you also were stated saying that you called for a major expansion of social housing, government built, government owned homes, kind of shifting away from that private developer model. Giving an understanding and how long it takes for a public project to build, how can we, look forward to some immediacy and relief with your plan, with what we're experiencing? What does this all look like?
So I'll go through a number of things. The first is I'm not looking to move away from the private sector. I'm looking to accompany the private sector with the public sector. So what that means is you work with the private sector to increase the construction of housing across New York City, and you also have the public sector take on its own responsibility of building 200,000 additional truly affordable homes. But these things have to happen together because, to your point, Patricia, we can't afford to wait. We cannot afford to wait for the number one crisis in New Yorkers' lives, which is housing. And, I appreciated that you spoke about the crisis of affordability, not just for tenants, but also for homeowners, also for our seniors. Before I was an assembly member, before I was running for mayor, I was a foreclosure prevention housing counselor. I worked in Queens and Jackson Heights and Richmond Hill, and I worked with low to moderate income homeowners who were struggling to stay in their homes. And so our proposal for housing is multifaceted. For tenants, we are going to freeze the rent and rent stabilize tenants. That's more than 2 million tenants who have a median household income of about $60,000. Many of them are seniors that are on fixed incomes. So when you raise their rent 2, 3, 4, 5, or over the last 4 years, 12%, you're pushing them out of the city. The second is, how do we make it easier to be a homeowner in New York City? Part of that is taking on a broken property tax system. We know it's broken because the city can't even defend it in court anymore. That's going to be a big part of our Albany agenda. The other is that I've also heard from a number of homeowners about deed theft. Deed theft is something that is targeting predominantly older New Yorkers, predominantly Black and brown New Yorkers, all on those same points that you were making about refinancing, transfer, inheritance, people knocking on an elder's door and saying, do you need help writing your will? Do you need help refinancing? And all of a sudden they find they've transferred the deed over to someone else. So we have put forward a commitment to create the Office of Deed Theft Prevention with $20 million in funding for legal services so that we're proactively reaching out to our elders to help them with these questions, as opposed to leaving them vulnerable to this kind of exploitation and preying. The last point I'll just make on this is that we also need to take on discriminatory systems. And what I mean by that is the city has something called the property tax lien sale. It's created by Rudy Giuliani. The city is 6 times more likely to sell a tax lien in a Black neighborhood than a white neighborhood. A tax lien is, you might have paid off your whole mortgage. If you're behind on your water bill or your property taxes, the city will sell that debt to a third-party debt collector, put you on a fast track to foreclosure. We're going to abolish that because it's not how you fund the city budget, and you're pushing people out of their homes. It's time to actually do everything we can to keep them in their homes. It's a big part of our plan.
And so a counter question on that, because that's actually a big problem in Queens. So the tax lien sales. So what does that look like in terms of a timeline?
This is going to be one of the focuses as we go into the first year in office, is to take the steps to abolish it. And the reason that it's so urgent to me as a first year priority is because of the fact that when I was a housing counselor, I would see the day the city published the list, because it's publicly available, the names, the addresses. I would hear from those New Yorkers that people were following them in the grocery store, telling them, we'll give you $30,000 in cash if you just give up your home. And some people did because they didn't know better. And that's the city allowing for that predatory action. So for me, it's going to be something we do in the first year, the steps that we take to abolish that and ensure that we're making it easier.
Thank you for answering that. All right, so I'm going to move on to education, because it's become increasingly clear that our young people need more than just a college pathway. Many students here in Queens and need multiple on-ramp opportunities to succeed: career and technical training, entrepreneurship programs, apprenticeship, creative arts, and pathways that reflect real life skills and interests. At the same time, we've seen efforts, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, like BU, Black Curriculum Studies Proposal. Have you heard of BU? Okay. Seeks to embed Black history, culture, and critical civic learning into everyday instruction. That has partially been rolled out by the DOE, but has not been fully executed. So there's some fragmented things. So when we think about education, it's particularly as we're looking at the landscape where education is under attack, all of these things, talk to us about how you intend to expand educational opportunities and to make sure that it is inclusive in our learning.
Patricia, I love the citation of the Black Studies curriculum, because I think it's an example of a glimpse of something that's promising, whose work has yet still to be done. But this was a $27 million investment that was critical, but it's only been adopted by about 200 schools. It will be a priority for my DOE to actually invest in this and have broader adoption across the entire system, because we have to understand that there's a reason why the Trump administration is looking to rewrite our history. It's in order to actually rewrite our future. And we have to know that our students that we are bringing up through this system understand the city that they are in, the country that they are in, and the truth and the history of those very places. So for me, curricula is incredibly important. The other piece that I would also say, what I've heard from a number of parents, is the hopes around class size and class size reduction, but the need for the city to step up to do that. Because the city's been in compliance thus far, but it's on the verge of falling out of it. We need to hire about 7,000 to 9,000 teachers over the next few years. So we've just put out a commitment to create something called classroom, community to classroom. This would hire 1,000 new teachers a year by giving tuition subsidies to high school seniors who would go to study to become a teacher with a commitment to be in the public school system for 3 years, as well as adults who are looking to switch professions. And this would be $12,000 per person. This would cost about $12 million. And we would actually get this money by saving on a lot of the contracts we have in DOE, where we spend $10 billion a year on contracts and consultants, many of which are actually duplicative. And there's many savings to be had that could be reinvested back into the classroom.
Thank you for sharing that. So it's no secret. I mean, we see the news, we see it all over. It's no secret that there is this discussion from the from the president of the United States talking about his interest in this race. And we hear you and we see you talking about you're willing to stand up and fight. Can you help us to understand what does fight look like? And how will your fight, if elected, impact us real time? What does that look like? Is that a media fight? Is that a legal fight? What does it all mean when you're saying you're going to fight? And is that an effective way? So we want to hear more about that.
Fight has to mean all of these things. It cannot just mean one of them. And I'll give you a few examples. You know, in California, the president had made threats and also had the deployment of a National Guard. It took the mayor of LA working with the attorney general and the governor of that state. They filed a lawsuit. Federal judge found in their favor that the deployment was illegal. The attorney general there said that for every dollar they spent on legal fees, they recovered more than $33,000 that would have otherwise been lost in federal funding. I give that as an example because it will be critically important to have a unified approach to fighting back at Donald Trump. It can't just be me as the mayor. It'll also mean working with the Attorney General, Tish James, with the Governor, Kathy Hochul, and I'm proud to have both of their endorsements. And what this race is coming down to is a vision of fighting Donald Trump by having a team around you that is using the courts, that is using the media, that is also making clear to New Yorkers the cost of this fight. Or the other candidate in this race, Andrew Cuomo, who's been on the phone with Donald Trump coordinating about this very race. And when Donald Trump weaponized the justice system to go after Tish James, Andrew Cuomo put out a statement that didn't even mention either of their names. And that, to me, is something of immense concern, because I think the first part of fighting is to be able to name the person that you're fighting. The second thing that I will also add is that Donald Trump is threatening an immense amount of political retribution if I'm the mayor. But we should also be clear, he's doing that right now. He's suspended $18 billion in infrastructure grants on the basis of DEI right now because he's mad Democrats won't let him shut down the government and steal 4 million New Yorkers, 4 million Americans' healthcare from them. But in addition to that, he's also taken $80 million out of a city bank account when Eric Adams was the mayor, $50 million in suspensions from school funding because we refuse to give up trans kids. So I say this to you as the threats are real, the threats are now. What we need is a mayor who will actually fight back.
Understood. I'm getting a warning sign on that I have one more question. I really have an hour, maybe 2 hours worth of questions, but I have one more question that I'm able to ask you. And I think this is a good one because AI is rapidly changing every single day. There's no guardrails around it. It threatens us in many spaces from a ethical standpoint, from a privacy standpoint. It threatens us because there are many people in our communities that are not even able to manage basic technology. And now we're being flooded and there's no restrictions and there's no guardrails. So talk to us about how you would protect New Yorkers in this space with things that are happening at a rapid pace, in addition to all of the critical issues that I just began to touch on: housing, public safety. In your first 100 days, and I'm trying to compress this question, what does the mayoral rollout look like?
Well, for the first 100 days, the focus is on starting to deliver on our affordability agenda. The reason I have spoken so much about affordability is that we're living in the most expensive city in the United States of America, and 1 in 4 New Yorkers are living in poverty. And for those who are actually able to live a life of any stability, it feels as if it's being ripped from their hands right now. And so city government has a real opportunity to show that not only do we understand it's our job to make life easier, but that we can deliver on that. And so to me, that doesn't just mean freezing the rent. It doesn't just mean an office of deep debt prevention. It doesn't just mean delivering on universal childcare. It also means something like baby baskets, where you would deliver a baby basket of information and resources for $19 million to every family of a newborn child in New York City, which could help to address the maternal mortality crisis we have in this city, where Black women continue to face 9 times higher of a rate of mortality when going into a day that should be one of the greatest days in any family's life. So I share this with you as what that focus will be when we get into office, what we will be delivering on. And to the question on AI, I have heard from many about a concern of larger scale job loss, especially from those in the tech sector. We've had close to 24 tech companies that have had significant layoffs in New York City. And there's an estimation by the World Economic Forum that by 2030, we're going to see a much larger level of job loss. And so one of my colleagues, whose endorsement I'm proud to have, State Senator Kristen Gonzalez, she has put forward a bill in Albany called the Loading Act, which puts forward a number of regulations for AI. And I think that provides us with a good model. It's a model that would require state agencies to provide an assessment of all of the automated decision-making systems that are used and how that affects the actual delivery, whether it's of public benefits or rights or civil liberties or constitutional rights. Because right now, as you're saying, the public sector is trying to catch up to the impact of AI. We're not in a place of regulation. We're not in a place of protection. We're in a place of trying to even understand it. And I think we really have to expedite the way in which we're responding to it. And I think this is one piece of legislation that helps us to do that.
Wonderful. Mr. Mondani, you have 2 minutes to close out. Please talk to the audience on why they should consider you as the next mayoral-elect.
Well, I really appreciate this conversation, Patricia, and I really appreciate being invited here by NCNW and all of the work that you have been doing. I know that there is an upcoming 37th Harambe Youth Luncheon, and that's also something I want to congratulate everyone for, because just the fact this is the 37th one, it's a testament to the longevity of this fight. And it's also something that means a lot to me, because while I'm not Kenyan, I was born in Uganda in East Africa, and my father speaks Swahili. And the term Harambe means let's pull together. And that is in many ways an essence of my politics, because it's about bringing New Yorkers together for a vision of a city that they could do more than just struggle. And many decades ago, Dr. King said, what good is having the right to sit at a lunch counter if you can't afford to buy a hamburger? And the interconnected nature of both civil rights and economic rights. And this campaign is about fulfilling not only those rights and those freedoms, but ensuring that every New Yorker can exercise them. So thank you for the consideration. I hope to earn your vote in these next 2.5 weeks that we have until the election. And I look forward to leading this city and delivering on this affordability agenda for every single one of the 8.5 million people who call this city home. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mondani, and thank you to the audience as you tuned in this evening. Tonight, we listened, I asked some questions, and now what's important is what matters most: participation, right? It's very important that you understand that we have to turn this awareness into action. And it's very important because conversations without action, they mean nothing. So what does that look like for us? That looks like making sure that you understand where you're registered at to vote, making sure that you exercise your vote, and honoring the fact that our generations fought for the right for us to vote. You should know that early voting starts on October 23rd through November 2nd. I charge you to hold your elected officials accountable. So if there are people that are not able to get out to vote via way of transportation issues or any barriers, mobility issues, let's just make sure that we get people out to vote. And for you, to our audience who are listening and listening to our candidates, do your research. Make sure that you're asking the right questions, take in all of the information, and make the most important informed decision, because at the end of the day, this is our livelihoods. So I want to thank you on behalf of myself and being here on NCNW. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk to Mayor-elect Mondani. Thank you, Mr. Mondani.
Thank you. It was a real pleasure, Patricia, and I look forward to more of these conversations and hopefully one day to be able to say so in person. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely weekend.
Well, thank you again to Mandani, as well as a special thank you to Patricia Robinson for moderating. I do want to let you all know, because we didn't let you all know in the beginning, that unfortunately we did extend an invitation to former Governor Andrew Cuomo, and he was not able to participate during our second reach out to him. We do have his representative on the line, but again, we did inform his team that we only want to hear from the candidates directly, and that we do appreciate the fact that he sent someone, but we are not able to let them speak at this time. But again, our moderator, Patricia Robinson, thank you for your phenomenal job. We are very grateful for your time, as well as the Honorable Mandani's time. I want to give a special thank you to my Social Justice Committee, especially my co-chair, Janice Welch. A deep appreciation goes to our Planning Committee, which consists of Shakina Black, which is our president, Tony Nicole Brown, Coleman Brown, Nicole Hicks, Janice Welch, for their hard work in bringing this event together. And a heartfelt thank you again, as well as our candidates, gotta say that again, as well as our community partners and sponsors, which include the Addersley Park Civic Association, D4 Women in Action, Epsilon Phi Omega chapter of the AKA, Phi Delta Kappa National Sorority Inc., Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Inc., and Zeta Zeta Lambda Fraternity for their support in making this event possible. We do have a survey that we would like for you all to do. If Tony can put the link to the survey in the chat, that would be very, very helpful, or someone put the link in the chat for everyone to fill out. We would like your feedback on how this event turned out, as well as any additional thoughts that any of you have for future programming events that will take place. So please fill out that survey. And it should be added in the chat soon. If you can't do the screenshot of the code, but the QR code is up. And second, so you could, okay. So yes, thank you. So you could go to the next one, Tony, as well as the link is in the chat. So I want you all to know that our upcoming event, which the Honorable Mandani mentioned, that we are hosting is the Harambe event. It's our 37th annual event. We are honoring quite a bit of young leaders, and we do encourage members of the community to come out and show some love to our future leaders. So the event is going to be on November 1st at noon at Anton's, which is on Springfield. Tickets are available. I believe the deadline to purchase tickets is coming soon. So please, if you all have the time to do so, please come out and support and show appreciation to our young leaders. And with that, I thank you all. And again, our sponsors, I thank you all for your time. Please fill out the survey again. And have a good night.
Hold for the live stream to end, please. Okay, we're good. Okay, good night, everybody.